Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this March 11, 2015 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, friends, I'm going to do something a little different. The last several nights I've been speaking about the live program aired on Syrian television in December 2013 when an advisor to former Iranian President Khatami spoke in an interview explaining how, now this is December 2013, just 20 days after, this was on December 11, so it was just 20 days after the Geneva Talks between the P5+1 or the E3+3. I explained that some last night, how Europe calls it the E3+3. United States, the Westerners call it the P5+1. The P5 meaning the P for permanent, the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, the United States, the UK, Russia, China, and France. Probably better to say that with the 3 tribes of Israel first. The US, the UK, France. France would probably prefer we said it the other way. France, the UK, the US, China, and Russia. +1 is Germany, those who were negotiating with Iran for at least a year before this Geneva Talk meeting. And just 20 days after the public meeting, the publicly aired, the publicly announced Geneva Talks, after they had already been talking for more than a year anyway, but when they announced the beginning of talks to create a deal, and it was announced as if they already had a deal underway that they would just need to finalize in 6 months. And then in 6 months we find out they really don't have a deal and they're delaying it so that they can finalize it sometime in the future at a date they announced, that they then pushed forward again and delayed it, and it's still in that process of delay. But in December, 20 days after the Geneva Talks of November 2013, Mohammed Sadiq Al-Hosseini went on an interview live in Syria on Syrian TV. I've been playing you excerpts from that in the past few days. Now, back in December, I played the whole thing, contiguous. Tonight, I've got a different segment of that program, that live program from Syrian television, that I want to air for you tonight, because I want you to get a real good understanding of how, like as former United States Secretary of State George P. Shultz said in an interview with the BBC in November 2013, just a few days after the Geneva Talks, he was explaining that the Iranians are like, they're great rug merchants. You know, like great used car salesmen. You know, they'll pitch you anything and get you to drive that, pay for that car and drive it off the lot. Then it's yours. And so Iran wants those sanctions stopped against them, so they'll tell you anything. But they're going to keep working on their bomb. You'll hear that explained in this segment of this live program on Syrian television. Mr. Al-Hosseini, former advisor to an Iranian president, is speaking in the Arabian language. But that's easily, as I've mentioned before, that's easily translated into English, and it has been translated into English, and the English subtitles appear at the bottom, so you'll be able to read exactly and know, just read the subtitles, you'll know exactly what he's saying. Now, that's, I believe, so important, friends. I'm dropping anything else. We're just doing that tonight. For those of you who are watching live, to cover a half hour or so, I plan to play that. Well, we'll go a little less tonight. I plan to play that 3 times in a row. So I'll go ahead and say so long, because some of you, after you've heard it once, you may say, that's all of that I want to hear. I'm going to go pray. And hopefully, if you're encouraged to pray after just hearing it once, go and pray. Those of you who are watching in the archive, I'll probably edit out those 2 repeats and just go straight to the close. And after we play it the last time, I probably will not come back and say anything else. So I'll go ahead and say to you, this being Wednesday night, God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll see you tomorrow night, Thursday night, here on Nightcast. But we'll go straight from the last time I play it to the outro. And again, for those watching in the archive, I'm just going to play it once. If you want to see it again, just since you're watching a video, just repeat the video, and we'll move it forward to where it starts, or whatever portion of it you want to see again, and just play that over and over until you really, really got it, or sick of it, or say, oh, God, help us, we are in trouble. We've got a president who, as one of my viewers put it, is wearing Mickey Mouse ears and not hearing the truth, and not listening to elder statesman, former United States Secretary of State George Shultz, who had, how long, 1982 to 1989? That would be 7 good years, 7 or 8 years, however you count the timing, of dealing with Iran and learning from firsthand experience that, as he said, and we've played that for you in the past few nights directly from the lips of George P. Shultz, he said, they're great rug merchants, not for nothing. They will smile at you, encourage you on your way, and cut your throat. Watch. They're going to substantiate what Mr. Shultz said themselves with Advisor Mohammed Sadak Al-Hosseini telling you himself how they tricked the P5+1, the E3+3. Thanks for joining me tonight, friends. As I said, we'll just sign off straight from the last time we play this to the outro for the program. God willing, we'll see you tomorrow night. Please listen carefully to this. Those of you watching live, maybe you want to sit through it all 3 times that I play and repeat it and really soak in how naive the current administration of the United States and leaders in Europe, and part of the P5, even China and Russia, are naive to what's happening, how Iran is deceiving and tricking everybody involved, and how they're going to explain they've got uranium at a much higher rate than they've revealed. You'll hear it yourself. Here now from live television that we recorded from live television on December 11, 2013, airing in Syria on Syrian News TV, the former political advisor to Iranian President Khatami, Mohammed Sadak Al-Hosseini. Friends, now before I play this for the 3rd time, what I want to do is I want to go to some slides we have on the screen here. Let me widen back out. Go to some slides we have on the screen here behind me that show a time period that, well, let's see, wait a minute. I want to go to, well, we got to go all the way out. I want to go to I wanted to show the relationship. Oh, okay. I don't have it on any of the studio shots. I've got it on a slide. So let me come on back in. On the side of the chart, on the left side of the chart, you see a depiction of this great image of Daniel 2, the head of gold, the arms of silver, arms and breast of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, and the legs and feet of iron, and with the feet and toes partly iron and partly clay. The arms and breast of silver, well, first of all, the head of gold is parallel or synonymous with the four beasts of Daniel 7, the first of those four beasts being a lion. And that represented the Chaldean Empire, the head of gold representing King Nebuchadnezzar, the head of the Chaldean Empire. Now, the next world-ruling government, the second world-ruling government, in the great image was depicted by the breast and arms of silver, which were the same thing that in Daniel 7, the second beast of Daniel 7, depicted by bear's claws, and that was the Persian Empire, the second world-ruling empire. Now, when you watch the speech that I introduced to you by the advisor to former Iranian President Khatami, you'll see that he'll be talking about a transition between the Persian government and Alexander the Great, when Alexander beat the Persian government. They've resented that ever since it happened. Persia has. You know, Iran today is the modern day descendant. They are the modern day descendants of Persia. The name has just been changed, not necessarily to protect the innocents per se, but the name of Persia has been changed to Iran. So looking at history, there was a time right after King Nebuchadnezzar and the Chaldean Empire when the second world ruling empire was in vogue. And again, that was depicted under the great image by the breast and arms of silver, and in Daniel 2, and in Daniel 7 by the second beast with the paws of a bear, picturing the Persian Empire. Now that third empire that's depicted in Daniel 2 under the great image by the belly and thighs of brass was the Greek Macedonian Empire that beat the Persian Empire. And the depiction of that empire, the Greek Empire, Greco-Macedonian Empire, by the belly and thighs of brass, is the same empire depicted by Daniel 7, the third beast of Daniel 7, being that leopard that had four heads. And Alexander had four generals to whom he left his kingdom before that third world ruling empire ended. So in this speech and this talk, in this the interview on live Syrian News TV, featuring the former political advisor to Iranian President Khatami, that being Mohammad Sadek Al-Hosseini, when he's speaking about the third world ruling empire of Alexander beating the Persian Empire, he's speaking about what you see there on the left, the third world ruling empire beating the second world ruling empire, that leopard with four heads beating that bear with those bear's paws. And they've resented that, and they're talking about a time when the Persian Empire can beat Greece. So all of that plays into the equation. And you see the problems Greece is having today, and Persia doesn't want to see Greece. They want to beat Greece, and more than that, you'll hear him talking about how they want to annihilate Israel, and not just Israel in the Middle East. They also specifically mention they want to then go after and destroy the United States. And for those who understand, the United States being the modern-day descendants of Manasseh, one of the sons of Joseph, and both Manasseh and Ephraim, the UK, take the name of Joseph as one of the 12 sons of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So you've got modern-day Persia in the name of Iran wanting to beat Israel and all of its living existence today, both in the Middle East, where Judah primarily is, in the little country, little area that includes Jerusalem in the Middle East, and they want to beat Israel wherever she is in the world, wherever the 12 tribes are in the world. In the United States, United Kingdom, that doesn't let you off the hook either, or Canada, or Brother Reuben, you in France. This modern-day Persia, the Iran wants to annihilate all Israel. And so I thought it might be good if I just took a moment, or a few minutes, and explain how this modern-day Iran is your old, ancient, world-ruling empire, the second world-ruling empire after King Nebuchadnezzar and the Chaldean Empire of Persia. And I don't see where I have a shot where I can go any tighter. You just need to look on the left two columns there, which I think you can see those okay. Yeah, I was just taking a closer look to see if I could go tighter on those shots. At this moment, I'm not able to do that. But for those of you that stayed with it and watched the first thing twice in a row already, now for those of you watching in the archive, what I've just decided I would do is from where I did go into the first playing of Mr. Al-Hosseini's live talk on Syrian television on December 11, 2013, and go to where I took a pause between the second and third playing of it on the live stream tonight to explain, so you could really get it here, that that Iran today is your modern-day old ancient Persia, and it was the second world-ruling kingdom. It was beat out by Alexander the Great, the third world-ruling kingdom, and which Alexander the Great represents Greece. And so Persia today wants to turn time back. They want to become the world-ruling empire again by beating out Greece, who beat them. So that'll be mentioned, and the Treaty of if it were on the screen, I could read it and say it to you. You'll see him mention the Treaty of Hadababaya or something like that. And he talks about a strategic patience right after that they utilized for 10 or 11 years. That treaty that he mentioned goes back to the 7th century, when that treaty was a 10-year truce. And during that truce, both sides, involving Prophet Muhammad and those and his enemies, they did a 10-year truce they called the Treaty of Hadabaya, something like that. You'll see it in the live talk. And so the Iranian people, they look at the history of the Islamic world, and they replay a lot of that history. And so they're replaying the Treaty of Hadabaya and using what they call strategic patience, and he explains they are willing to do it for 10 or 11 years. And, of course, what they're doing with this Geneva Talks, they're talking about the Treaty of Hadabaya in Geneva. You'll see him say that this treaty of blah, 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 blah in Geneva. So they're applying this treaty, this old ancient treaty, as if it were brand new, as if it were anew now, commencing with the Geneva Talks. And their strategic patience, and he actually takes it back 10 years before that, where they've been using patience to lull you over so you won't fight them too hard other than the sanctions. And in the meantime, they're building, enriching their uranium, and as he says in this thing, I didn't play all of it. There's other parts where he really explains it in detail. A lot of this stuff they're enriching is, let me come out of this. This stuff they're enriching is underground. They've kept it hidden, and it's at a higher level than they revealed. They revealed stuff at a lower level, and they'll reduce that lower level stuff, and and even that was enriched, as he says, more than was needed to be enriched, so that when they leveled it, they still in a position to, after they lull you off and the political climate in America changes and war between Democrats and Republicans resume, well, hey, while you're occupied with events like what's happening right now in this town of Ferguson with the United States government under the influence of Islamic President Obama, causing such an uproar and a situation that the police chief has resigned and clerks and judges have resigned because they've made such a climate. And the news makes the point that that there's only 3 policemen who are black in that city, and the majority of the city is black. Okay, after making that point, majority of the city is black, then they go on to say that the majority of the people who wind up being stopped and inspected are blacks, 2 to 1. Well, they've just said that the city is majority black, so the city itself is 2 to 1. So if you were doing things on an even scale, of course you're going to be stopping 2 to 1 blacks, because you got twice as many or more than twice as many blacks living in the city. So just the law of averages, just the straight, in fact, normal situation is you're going to have more blacks stopped because more blacks are living there. So they've, you know, the news becomes guilty of inflammatory type things. They inflame everything. They use facts to make it sound like there's all kind of bias when perhaps there's not. You've got a police officer who is simply trying to do his job. You had a guy punching at him, disrespectful of authority. You had, sorry, I didn't mean to knock my shot out there, friends. I was trying to change the shot with just our nightcast in the background for a moment. You had people screaming and hollering because the guy in Ferguson, and that's in today's news, so I'm just commenting on that while I'm in between the second and third play. Those of you watching in the archive, you haven't seen this guy yet, so I'm delaying your seeing it, but this is today's news. For those watching the live stream, I do want to mention this because it's hot in today's news about Ferguson. People were screaming and hollering that this, I'm going to call a spade, that this thug who had just robbed a convenience store and was shoving around the little small owner, bullying him, because the guy is much bigger than the little small owner. And the parents and others, the mom is screaming and hollering that the police released this video to show that. Why? Because it upset the fraud they were trying to pull off, presenting their son as a nice, young, innocent teenage guy, when the real truth is he was a bullying thug. And he tried to punch the police officer, and the people who said he had his hands raised like he was going to surrender admitted they lied. But now that that's caught on, that, hey, he was going to surrender, that lie is like, well, so what? Somebody said that, you know, we like it the way it was. We like him as an innocent guy who didn't hold up a convenience store and bully around the owner. And we like it that he didn't, in our mind, he didn't slug the officer and try to take over his police car and be extremely disrespectful to him. He was raising his hands to surrender. Baloney. The guy that said he did that admitted that they lied. And here we've got the Department of Justice forcing a city. So here we are in the midst of internal strife. A house divided against itself will fall at a very time when the world is in trouble and about to annihilate all mankind once Iran gets those bombs, and that's their intent. All right, now, for those watching live, you've seen it twice if you stayed with me. For those watching in the archive, we're finally, for you, going. This is my third play of it during this program. I'm repeating this third time. You're seeing it for the first time in this video if you're watching on the archive, because I'm editing out those first 2 plays. And for those who watched live where we didn't say anything, and some of you I know listen on a podcast version of this. So this guy speaking in the Arabian language for you will be absolutely meaningless. So what I'm going to try my best to do is, as this plays, I'm going to turn down the volume. You'll hear the man speaking in the Arabian language down real low. I'm going to try to read these and keep up with it as the English subtitles scroll across the screen, so that those of you listening only to a podcast and not seeing video will be able to know what this man speaking in the Arabian language is saying. All right, now we're going to it for the third time for those of you watching live, for the first time for those of you watching it on the archive. We're going now again to that Syrian news television program of December 11, 2013, aired on Syrian television, December 2013, just 20 days after the Geneva Talks started, featuring the former political advisor to Iranian President Khatami, Mohammed Sadek Al-Hosseini. Believe me, President Obama tried 5 times to get a free handshake from President Rouhani on the sidelines of the UN General Council, and he failed. And he said, I'm prepared to discuss the issue of Bahrain like Iran wants, but just give me that handshake. This was because he was defeated at the gates of Damascus. The chemical weapons deal, it was a trap in which we ensnared him. He lost that battle, and we won it. Those chemical weapons were a heavy burden, pieces of scrap metal that we should have thrown away a long time ago, but we gave them to them in a very smart diplomatic maneuver, which involves 3 elements: complete silence on the part of Hezbollah, the big stick of Iran, and a first-class diplomatic team in Syria, which has managed to remain steadfast in the face of all the onslaughts. What happened to the Americans, on the other hand? Obama had to make a great retreat. He was forced to accept a handshake from President Rouhani, whom he considered a kind of Gorbachev or Sadat, so that the day would not come when he would be forced to kiss the hands of Hassan Nasrallah and Imam Khomeini, and so they would hold their fire that was prepared to annihilate Israel. All the operations, it has been revealed that our missiles can now very easily reach Tel Aviv. We have weapons that can make Israel go blind. Nasrallah, the leader of the resistance, managed to deliver a 17-minute speech, and the Israel airplanes were unable to reach the southern suburb of Beirut or to fly over Lebanon. This is the first time. This means that we have a new strategic weapon in Syria, in Iran, and in the southern suburb of Beirut, which can prevent Israel from attacking. There's no honeymoon. We are engaged in a fierce war with the Americans on all levels. This is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in Geneva, and it will be followed by a conquest of Mecca. Now, let me just pause right there, friends, for this third play of it and mention that was the treaty I was trying to tell you about, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, that was back in the 17th century, a 10-year truce. And now they're applying it to Geneva and repeating a 10-year truce, so that, as he says here, the Geneva Agreement was achieved due to 3 things. The first was our strategic patience. That strategic patience, this is where that 10-year truce in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, or however you pronounce that, comes into play back from the 7th century. The strategic patience, they repeated that 10-year truce so that they could lull you into, oh, well, you can make peace with it. We're peaceful people. We only want to do these nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment thing for nuclear power purposes, you know. Okay, so the first was our strategic patience. Iran has maintained strategic patience for a very long time, 10 or 11 years. You see, that Treaty of Hudaybiyah was a 10-year truce. So they're repeating that, and they're using what they figure is the wisdom of that treaty for strategic patience for a very long time, 10 or 11 years. We were preparing a large quantity of enriched uranium so that when it was reduced, incidentally, for your information, when you conduct political negotiations with Iran, you lose, even when you think you have won. The Iranians have raised the level of uranium enrichment far beyond the level they really needed, so that when the level would be lowered, they'd have what they needed. So Saudi Arabia is on its way to perdition. Its role is over. Why? Because the Iranians have reached the Mediterranean Sea. You've begun to analyze the political situation correctly. There is a change. That's what President Obama used to talk about when he was coming to the office. Change. Well, here's your change. The day Greece reached the Mediterranean coast, Persia fell to Alexander the Great for 300 years. See, that's the changeover from the second world ruling empire back in ancient days to the third, with Alexander the Great and his generals. Persia fell to Alexander the Great, he says here, for 300 years. Today, now the Iranians are reaching the Mediterranean coast to Tyre. We are looking at 300 years of defeat for the Americans and the Westerners. Friends, and that's where we cut out there for this segment that I prepared for you. All right. So there you have a very significant and important interview. I had said at the beginning I was just going to go straight to the ending. I didn't know I was going to cut in and do some explanation before this third play and read the English subtitles to you for those who are listening just on the podcast version only. So I will go ahead and say so long to you. Thank you for joining me tonight, friends. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back here on Nightcast again tomorrow night, Thursday night, God willing, and the creek don't rise. So until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.